Imagine your company just spent, I don't know, $5 million on cutting-edge AI.
Oh, the classic flawless pitch, right.
Exactly. The pitch was flawless. They told you this technology is going to streamline operations, automate all the mind-numbing busy work, and basically rocket your productivity into the stratosphere.
Yeah, that's always the promise.
Right. But then Monday morning arrives, the tools are officially live, and almost instantly, productivity just plummets.
Just completely falls off a cliff.
Completely. And why? Well, because the only 3 people in the whole building who understand your company's core operations well enough to actually guide that AI are, packing up their desks to retire next month.
Yeah, it is a terrifying scenario. But I mean, it is playing out in corporate boardrooms all over the world right now.
It really is.
You have this incredibly powerful supercomputer sitting on everyone's desk, but there's this massive gaping chasm between what the tool can theoretically do and the actual readiness of the human being sitting at the keyboard.
And we are diving deep into that exact chasm today. We've got this fascinating launch announcement from EON AI Ventures, specifically looking at their new platform called EON AI Fluency for Enterprises.
Yeah, a really interesting approach to the problem.
Definitely. The goal of this deep dive is to explore how organizations are actually trying to bridge this huge disconnect between advanced AI tech and human readiness. And, whether you are a manager trying to keep your department afloat or a new hire feeling that crushing pressure of a high-tech learning curve, or really just someone endlessly curious about the future of work, understanding this capability gap is crucial to surviving the next decade.
Absolutely essential.
Okay, let's unpack this.
So to really grasp what a platform like EON AI Fluency is attempting to engineer, we have to look at the sheer physics of the current labor market. I mean, we are watching two massive demographic and technological shifts just collide at full speed.
Yeah, and the numbers driving this collision are pretty staggering based on our sources. First, we have the readiness gap. The data shows that right now, 85% of employees currently lack AI-related job skills.
85%.
Yeah.
Think about that.
It's wild. That is the vast majority of the global workforce just staring at complex generative tools and essentially freezing up.
All right. And that is just the first half of the crisis. We are handing out power tools to people who have, only ever used hand saws, and we're expecting them to build a house by tomorrow morning.
But the second half is what turns this from just a regular old training issue into a literal existential threat.
The silver tsunami.
Yes,
Yeah.
silver tsunami. 50% of subject matter experts across global industries are retiring within the next 5 to 7 years.
Half of them.
Yeah.
Half.
Half of the most knowledgeable people, the ones holding the actual blueprint for how your business runs, they are just walking out the door by the end of the decade. Our enterprise is essentially driving blind toward an operational cliff here. It feels like you're buying a fleet of advanced Formula One cars for everyday commuters, just as all the qualified driving instructors pack up and move to Florida to retire.
That is a perfect analogy. And what's fascinating here is the exact collision of these two timelines.
Right.
It's the cruel irony of that timing.
Right.
We are adopting technology that requires a deep, incredibly nuanced understanding of enterprise operations to deploy safely. An AI model needs to be told exactly what the parameters of success look like.
It needs guidance.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But at that exact historical moment, we are losing decades of specialized, hard-earned human knowledge. We are losing the exact people required to contextualize and guide the AI.
Let's ground this in reality for a second. An off-the-shelf generic AI tool doesn't know the undocumented quirks of your specific supply chain, right?
Not at all.
It doesn't know that the third-party logistics vendor always runs late on Tuesdays, or that, a specific sensor on your manufacturing floor throws false positives when the humidity gets too high.
Right, because the retiring experts hold all that institutional memory in their heads. They know the workarounds. They know all those weird anomalies.
The undocumented stuff.
Exactly. And if you lose that human context right as you automate your systems, the AI is essentially operating in a vacuum. It will confidently optimize a supply chain schedule that looks mathematically perfect on a screen.
But completely fails on the actual loading dock.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because it didn't know about the Tuesday delay.
Okay, so if that's the case, if generic AI fails because it lacks the undocumented context of your specific factory, the obvious solution seems to be just, training the new hires faster. Why can't we just rely on standard corporate training modules to get the new workforce up to speed before the veterans leave?
Well, because the mechanics of traditional corporate learning are fundamentally broken when it comes to complex operational tasks.
Broken how?
Traditional training is entirely decoupled from the actual work environment. It's just not practical.
Yeah, the stats are rough. The source notes that 60% of traditional training completely fails to stick. People just forget it.
And it makes perfect sense when you think about it.
Right. You sit in a windowless conference room for 3 days, somebody talks at you while clicking through some boring slide deck, they hand you a heavy binder.
And then a week later, you were standing in front of a malfunctioning server rack trying to remember page 42.
Exactly.
It's reactive, and it is static. It relies entirely on human memory, which, as we know, degrades under stress.
But here's where it gets really interesting, because I have to push back on this a little bit.
Okay, go ahead.
Let's look at the alternative. Just letting generic AI handle the heavy lifting. The industry data shows that generic AI tools can cover about 80% of enterprise needs.
Right, 80%.
Now, from a grading perspective, an 80% is a solid B minus. In the chaotic, duct-taped world of corporate operations, isn't getting 80% of our work handled instantly by an AI a massive win? I mean, why isn't a B minus enough?
Well, in a low-stakes environment, it absolutely is. If you are, drafting an internal newsletter or brainstorming a list of marketing slogans, an 80% solution saves you hours of time.
Sure, it's a huge help.
But EON AI Fluency is specifically engineered for what are categorized as high-stakes operations. And in those environments, the math completely changes. That B minus is the so-called 80% trap.
Okay, define high stakes for me in this context. What kind of operations are we talking about?
We're talking about things like operating a municipal electrical grid, or managing logistics for cold chain pharmaceuticals,
Wow, okay.
or running a complex aerospace manufacturing floor. In these scenarios, missing just 5% of critical context doesn't just result in a typo, it results in an explosion.
Yeah, that changes things.
It leads to severe safety risks, massive operational delays, and literally millions of dollars in scrapped materials.
So a B minus in a chemical plant just means you mix the wrong compounds.
Precisely. If an AI gives a technician advice on repairing a high-pressure valve, and it is 80% correct, that remaining 20% margin of error is exactly where catastrophic failure lives.
Yeah, you can't afford that.
High-stakes operations require 100% competency. There is zero tolerance for hallucination or, approximation.
Okay, that makes complete sense. Traditional training is broken because human memory fails under pressure, and generic AI is dangerous because it confidently guesses when it lacks context.
Right.
Which brings us to the core engineering problem that EON AI Fluency claims to solve. How do you feed an AI the undocumented, instinctual context of a 30-year veteran who is, as we said, retiring next Tuesday?
It really requires a massive shift from passive data collection to active knowledge capture. They call their initial phase knowledge preservation technologies.
And see, when I first hear knowledge preservation, my brain immediately goes to exit interviews.
Oh, like a survey.
Yeah, someone sits down with a clipboard and asks the retiring engineer to write down everything they know. But that is obviously impossible.
Completely impossible. It's impossible because experts often don't even realize what they know.
Right.
Their expertise has become muscle memory. They don't consciously think about the specific auditory pitch a machine makes right before it jams.
They just hear it.
Exactly. They just instinctively reach over and adjust the calibration without thinking. You cannot capture that on a written survey.
So how does the EON system actually extract that muscle memory?
By analyzing their digital and physical footprint,
Yeah.
the platform uses advanced AI to literally observe the veteran in their actual workflow.
Wait, really? How does it do that?
It maps the exact sequence of keystrokes they use to troubleshoot a software failure. It analyzes their decision trees. And in physical environments, using spatial computing, it can track where they look, how they move, and the precise sequence of physical interactions they have with a piece of equipment.
Wow, so it's essentially creating a digital shadow of the expert.
Exactly.
It's like capturing the ghost in the machine. It's a shadow that doesn't just mimic their movements, but actually maps out the underlying logic of why they moved that way, so it can replicate that logic later.
That is a great way to visualize it. You are mathematically preserving their experiential knowledge before it leaves the building. The platform ingests all of these micro-interactions and builds a comprehensive, dynamic database of best practices.
And these are specific to your enterprise.
Right, highly specific,
Mm-hmm.
not just scraped from the public internet.
I follow the logic there. We trap the expert's knowledge in a proprietary database. But, and here's the catch, a massive sprawling database is completely useless to a panicked new hire when an alarm is blaring on the factory floor, right?
Oh, absolutely. They don't have time to run a search query.
So how does the system proactively push this knowledge to the right person at the exact moment they need it?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that database is only the foundation. I mean, the extraction is meaningless without a delivery mechanism. And that is where their adaptive AI-driven training comes into play.
Okay, explain the adaptive part, because we already established that sitting in a classroom looking at boring slides doesn't work.
Adaptive means it responds to the real-time cognitive state of the learner. Instead of a one-size-fits-all module, the platform builds a highly personalized learning path.
Okay.
It looks at the specific role of the new employee, assesses their current baseline, and then cross-references that with the digital shadow of the retired expert we talked about.
So it builds a customized bridge between what the new hire knows and what the veteran used to do.
Exactly.
But mechanically, how does the user actually experience this? Are they just reading prompts on a tablet?
Well, often it involves extended reality, or XR. Imagine a new technician putting on a pair of mixed reality glasses and walking up to a complex generator.
Okay.
The AI recognizes the exact model of the generator in front of them. It then overlays digital, step-by-step instructions directly onto the physical equipment in the technician's field of vision.
That's incredible.
It highlights the exact bolt they need to loosen, like flashing it in red, based entirely on the workflow captured from the retired senior engineer.
And because it is adaptive, I assume it reacts if I do something wrong, like if I grab the wrong wrench.
Completely. If the technician hesitates or reaches for the wrong valve, the system immediately recognizes the error through spatial tracking. It pauses, issues a correction, and perhaps pulls up a brief, context-specific micro-lesson on why that specific valve is dangerous.
Wow.
It adapts to the pace and the friction points of the individual user.
So it blends the hard technical mechanics with contextual awareness. It isn't just saying turn this dial, it's explaining turn this dial because this specific machine tends to overheat if you don't.
Exactly. The why is just as important as the how.
That is incredibly powerful. But again, in high-stakes environments, we need proof. We need to know this technician isn't just, following floating red arrows blindly without understanding it.
Right, you need actual verification.
Exactly. How does an enterprise know that an employee has actually absorbed the underlying logic? How do they verify that 100% competency mark before leaving them totally unsupervised?
That requires bridging the gap between simulated learning and real-world execution. The platform tackles this through what they call precision verification and performance tracking.
Which means it isn't just giving them a multiple-choice quiz at the end of the simulation.
No, not at all. A quiz only tests short-term recall. Precision verification tracks measurable application. The system monitors the employee as they perform the actual task, gathering telemetry on their speed, their accuracy, and their adherence to safety protocols.
So it's watching them.
Yes,
Yeah.
it validates their performance in real time.
It's the equivalent of having an incredibly strict flight instructor sitting right there in the co-pilot seat.
That's exactly what it is.
They aren't just trusting that you read the manual on how to land the plane. They are watching your hands on the yoke, verifying your altitude, and scoring your actual physical execution of the landing before they ever sign off on your license.
And that tracking provides the enterprise with real empirical data. A plant manager doesn't have to guess if their shift is ready to operate the new AI-integrated machinery.
They have a dashboard.
Exactly. They have a dashboard showing exact competency metrics for every single operator. They know mathematically that the workforce is ready.
Which leads right into the feature that I think is arguably the most disruptive to how we view employment in general.
The continuous aspect.
Yes, the system doesn't just verify you once and then disappear. EON introduces this concept of lifelong AI mentorship.
It completely dismantles the old idea of onboarding as a finite event.
Because right now, you get trained for 2 weeks, and then you are essentially on your own. Maybe you get a boring annual refresher course. But a lifelong AI mentor means you have persistent, dynamic guidance throughout your entire career life cycle at that company.
Right. As your role evolves, the mentor evolves with you.
Yeah.
As the enterprise upgrades its physical technology, the mentor immediately pushes the new context to you. It creates a continuous state of skill enhancement.
So, like, if I get promoted from a floor technician to a line manager, the AI mentor shifts its focus. It starts overlaying instructions on how to turn bolts and starts overlaying analytics on how to optimize the workflow of the 10 people I am now managing.
Exactly. It blends hard skills with soft skills dynamically.
Hmm.
It provides a level of individualized support that would be financially impossible to provide using human managers.
Right.
You are essentially giving every single employee in the company a dedicated, world-class tutor who has perfectly memorized the entire operational history of the enterprise.
Now, any software company can write a fancy press release filled with incredible promises about mixed reality and continuous AI mentorship. I mean, it sounds somewhat like science fiction.
It really does.
But looking impartially at the architecture behind EON AI Fluency, there is a reason they are positioning themselves to actually execute this at scale. The leadership behind EON AI Ventures are the founders of EON Reality.
And that background is critical to analyzing their capability here.
Hmm.
They aren't some brand new startup trying to figure out how enterprise software works.
Yeah.
They have 25 years of experience specifically in immersive learning and spatial computing.
Yeah, the sources note they've spent over 2 decades building virtual campuses and complex extended reality training environments for global enterprises and governments. And when
Mhm.
you have that kind of architectural lineage, you understand the brutal reality of scaling.
Oh, absolutely.
You know how to take a deeply complex training protocol and deploy it seamlessly to 10,000 employees spread across 15 different countries, operating in 6 different languages.
They recognize that the hardest part of enterprise technology isn't really building the software. It's minimizing the deployment friction.
The rollout.
Right. Their platform is built to be modular. A multinational corporation doesn't have to overhaul their entire global training infrastructure overnight.
They don't have to boil the ocean.
Exactly. They can deploy the solution in targeted phases. They can look at their operations and say, okay, our European logistics division is losing 30% of its senior staff next year. That is our most critical bottleneck.
So they start there.
Exactly. They deploy the knowledge preservation and adaptive training there first, validate the performance, and then gradually expand that lifelong mentorship model across the rest of the organization.
So what does this all mean? When we step back and look at the sheer scale of the labor crisis and this proposed solution, there is a framing from Dan Lajerskar, the chairman of EON AI Ventures, that really captures the underlying philosophy here. He refers to this platform as an acceleration layer.
It's a very precise term.
Yeah.
It isn't replacing the human, and it isn't replacing the underlying AI tools. It's the necessary translation device between the two.
They call it an acceleration layer, but in practice, it really is a translator. It takes the raw, often terrifying, generalized power of a massive AI supercomputer and translates it into a highly specific, customized, step-by-step mentor that literally sits on the shoulder of a new hire.
Right.
It ensures that the enterprise can actually bridge the massive gap between what their departing experts know and what their incoming workforce can safely achieve.
Because the generative AI revolution is happening regardless of whether the workforce is ready for it. The capability gap is widening every single day.
It is.
Platforms structured like this are positioning themselves as the connective tissue that allows human cognition to actually catch up to and safely govern these new systems.
It is a heavy reality to process, but it truly is the defining operational challenge of the decade. To recap the journey we just took, we are looking at a global business landscape staring down a dual crisis. You have incredibly complex AI tools flooding the market, an 85% AI illiteracy rate among employees, and a silver tsunami where half of all subject matter experts are retiring in the next few years.
A perfect storm.
A perfect storm. We established that relying on generic AI is a massive liability in high-stakes environments because an 80% success rate in a chemical plant or a power grid can lead to catastrophic failure. High stakes demand 100% precision.
And that's where the gap is.
Right. And EON AI Fluency is attempting to solve this by acting as that crucial acceleration layer. It doesn't just survey experts, it uses advanced spatial and digital tracking to capture the behavioral shadows of retiring veterans. It preserves that undocumented logic and deploys it proactively through adaptive extended reality training.
And then there verifies it.
Yes. It rigorously verifies real-world execution to guarantee safety, and ultimately, it provides a lifelong, continuous AI mentor for every individual employee.
It is an incredibly comprehensive, mathematically driven framework for navigating one of the most precarious transition periods in the history of global business.
And for you, listening to this right now, I really encourage you to look at your own workplace tomorrow with a different lens. Look around your department and ask yourself, where does the ghost knowledge live?
That's a great question.
Who are the specific individuals holding the secret instinctual knowledge of how things actually run? What happens if they hand in their 2 weeks' notice tomorrow? And more importantly, how is your organization handling the transition from just passively learning a new software tool to actually executing high stakes tasks flawlessly alongside AI?
This raises an important question, though. It is a structural paradox that isn't explicitly resolved by the technology itself, but it is deeply necessary to consider as we start deploying these lifelong AI mentors.
Okay, let's hear it.
We have spent this entire deep dive analyzing the brilliance of capturing the exact expertise of retiring veterans.
Yeah,
And on a purely functional level, for high-stakes safety and operational continuity, it is absolutely essential. You need to know how the machine runs.
right.
But if a system perfectly captures and preserves the exact operational methods of the past, if it takes how we have always done it for 30 years and bakes that exact logic into a digital mentor that guides every single action of every new hire, do we risk accidentally trapping ourselves in past ways of thinking?
Oh, wow. That is a profound friction point. If the AI is trained to correct you every time you deviate from the retired expert's path, deviation basically becomes impossible.
Right. If your lifelong mentor is perfectly trained on the paradigms and constraints of the last 3 decades, how will the next generation of human workers ever invent radical rule-breaking innovations?
How do you disrupt yourself?
Exactly. How do you discover a completely new, vastly superior way to run a supply chain if the digital shadow on your shoulder constantly nudges you back to the old way of doing things?
Yeah.
Are we preserving our operational safety at the direct cost of our future agility?
It's like we have engineered a brilliant way to keep the ultimate driving instructor in the passenger seat forever, correcting our steering every single time we take a corner. But what happens when the road completely changes? What happens when we don't need to drive a car anymore, but we need to design a hovercraft? Does the preserved knowledge of the past eventually become the cage that holds us back?
It's a real dilemma.
That is an incredibly deep paradox, balancing the need for flawless operational continuity against the chaotic necessity of human innovation. And it is exactly the kind of question you should be pondering as you navigate your own integration into the AI era. We will leave you to mull that over. Until next time, keep digging deeper.